You wake up in the middle of the night to a message. It's her. The one who swore you were special. The one who said she had never met anyone like you. The message reads, "I think we need to talk." Your heart races. You know what comes after those words. And when the sun rises, the confirmation arrives cold, direct, blunt. It's over. No real explanation. No concrete reason. Just the emptiness of someone discarded without understanding why. 3 months ago, you were the center of her universe. Today, you are just another forgotten name in the contact list. This doesn't happen by accident. There's an invisible pattern operating behind the scenes of every modern relationship, and most men go their entire lives without seeing it. They believe that being kind, dedicated, and present is enough. They believe love is built on good intentions and sincere gestures. But the truth is much harsher than that. The truth is that, for certain women, relationships aren't based on pure feelings or genuine connections. They are based on something much more practical, much more calculated: value. Not the moral value your parents taught you to cultivate. Not the kindness of heart or the purity of intentions. We are talking about perceived value. What you offer that can be measured, compared, exchanged. Financial resources. Social status. Physical appearance. Emotional stability. Potential for growth. Each of these elements functions as currency in a silent market where relationships are negotiated without anyone openly admitting it. And when your perceived value drops, when you stop offering what she's seeking, interest disappears like smoke. Think about that friend who's always been the nice guy. Polite, attentive, always willing to help. He spends years trying to win someone over by being exactly who he is. But the women he desires never reciprocate. They appreciate the help, accept the favors, but when it comes time to choose someone to be with, they always pick someone else. Always the guy who seems less available, less predictable, less straight-laced. Why? Because the nice guy doesn't convey perceived value. He conveys need disguised as kindness. He conveys lack of options disguised as availability. And in the value market, that is lethal. Now look at the successful businessman. He built everything from scratch. He worked 16-hour days for years. He earned respect, money, recognition. When he met his wife, she was enchanted by his determination, his ambition, his growth trajectory. But something changed. After achieving what he wanted, he relaxed. He stopped pursuing new goals. He settled into routine. His value didn't drop financially, but it stagnated symbolically. And it was precisely at that moment that his wife started looking elsewhere. Not because he became bad, but because he stopped evolving. Because stagnant value is lost value. This pattern repeats in 1,000 different variations. The woman who seeks the bad boy isn't being irrational. She is seeking a specific type of value: excitement, unpredictability, the feeling of being alive. The stable man offers security, but security alone doesn't generate desire. She might even marry the stable one after the bad boy hurts her enough, but the initial choice reveals an inconvenient truth: certain women prioritize different types of value at different moments in life. Have you noticed how some women keep multiple men orbiting around them at the same time? It's not by chance. Each offers a different type of value. One provides emotional validation, constant attention, always available to listen to complaints. Another offers adventure, unpredictable nights, a break from routine. A third offers financial security, gifts, material stability. And she manages all these providers like someone managing an investment portfolio. Each has a function. Each delivers something the others do not. If you're enjoying this reflection, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And leave in the comments which city or country you're watching from, because this reality happens everywhere, but each region has its particularities. I want to know your experience with this. On social media, the value game becomes even more explicit. Some men become validation machines, liking every photo, responding to every story, always present in the comments. They think they are building something. In reality, they are just providing free attention while she seeks real value elsewhere. The guy she really wants is precisely the one who isn't liking anything, who isn't commenting, who barely responds to messages. Why? Because scarcity generates perceived value. Excessive availability destroys it. The exchange dynamic becomes clear when we observe relationships that end without explanation. The man wakes up one day to find he's been replaced. He reviews every moment, every conversation, trying to understand where he went wrong. But the problem wasn't what he did wrong. It was what he stopped doing right. It was the value he ceased to demonstrate. It was the evolution he interrupted. It was her perception that someone better is available, someone who offers more, someone who represents an upgrade. Some men discover this too late. They invest years in relationships believing they are building something solid based on genuine love. But when the crisis comes, when perceived value drops for any reason, illness, unemployment, depression, the partner disappears. Not because she's necessarily bad, but because, for certain women, relationships work like tacit contracts of exchange. When one party stops delivering, the contract is broken. Plain and simple. The most disturbing issue isn't recognizing that this exists. It's realizing how often it happens. It's understanding that modern relationships, for many people, aren't based on unconditional commitment or romantic love like in the movies. They are based on perceived utility. On how much you add to her life. On how much you elevate her status. On how you make her feel in a certain way. And when you stop doing that, when your perceived value diminishes, interest evaporates along with it. But there's something even deeper happening here. Something that goes beyond the individual behavior of certain women. We are facing a structural shift in how relationships are built in modern society. The next layer of this reality will show exactly how this value system works in practice, and why even men aware of it end up falling into the same traps. The value system in relationships operates on multiple dimensions simultaneously, and each carries its own weight on the scale of attraction. Start with financial resources. We're not just talking about wealthy men. We're talking about the perception of stability, the ability to provide, of not being a burden. For certain women, a man without visible financial ambition is automatically discarded, regardless of how many other qualities he possesses. This isn't pure superficiality. It's survival instinct transformed into a modern selection criterion. Social status works in an even subtler way. A guy may not have money, but if he has influence, connections, recognition in his field, that generates perceived value. That's why poor artists manage to have relationships while ordinary workers with better salaries remain alone. Status isn't measured only in bank accounts. It's measured in how many people know you, respect you, desire you. The more others want you, the more she wants you. It's competition disguised as desire. Physical appearance is the most obvious type of value and the one most socially denied. Everyone says personality matters more, but choice patterns show otherwise. A physically attractive man gets more chances, more tolerance, more benefit of the doubt. He can make mistakes that an average man cannot. He might be less interesting in conversation. He might offer less emotionally. But his appearance compensates for these flaws in the math of perceived value. And the more society denies this truth, the more it operates behind the scenes, unquestioned. Now we come to emotional value, the most complex of all. Some women seek men who make them feel safe. Others seek men who make them feel alive. The difference isn't in what's right or wrong, but in the type of experience she prioritizes at that moment in life. The man who offers emotional stability becomes the safe harbor. The man who offers emotional intensity becomes the addiction. And often she wants both, but in different people, at different times. Future potential is perhaps the type of value most betrayed by men. They think they've achieved something definitive when they enter a relationship. But for certain women, the relationship is a bet on his future, not a celebration of the present. She isn't in love with who you are now. She's investing in what you can become. And if that future doesn't materialize, if you stagnate, if the trajectory doesn't unfold as she imagined, the investment is withdrawn. You become a depreciated asset in her portfolio. Here comes a twist few notice. Value isn't objective, it's perceived. Two men can have exactly the same characteristics, but one demonstrates value while the other hides it. Demonstrating value isn't arrogance. It's effective communication of what you offer. The guy who hides his achievements out of modesty is sabotaging his own perceived value. The guy who communicates his accomplishments without seeming desperate is building attraction. The difference lies in how the information is delivered, not in the information itself. This dynamic creates absurd situations. The man who helps genuinely loses value because he seems needy for approval. The man who helps strategically gains value because he seems generous by choice, not by lack. Intention matters less than perception. And perception is shaped by how you position yourself, not by who you really are. This inverts the entire moral logic society teaches about relationships. Consider the case of the emotional therapist. He listens to all her problems. He's always available when she needs to vent. He offers advice, support, deep understanding. He believes he's building true intimacy. But for her, he's just fulfilling a function, free emotional support. When she meets someone who offers other types of value, emotion, status, physical attraction, she moves on without guilt. The emotional therapist doesn't understand why he was discarded. After all, he was always there. Exactly. He was always there. And things that are always available lose value. The branch-switching scenario perfectly illustrates how this system works. She doesn't end the current relationship until she secures the next one. Not out of calculated malice, but out of instinctive pragmatism. Why risk ending up with nothing while seeking something better? So she keeps you as Plan B while testing Plan A. If Plan A works, you're discarded. If Plan A fails, she comes back as if nothing happened. And you, relieved to have her back, accept without question. After all, she returned. That must mean something, right? Wrong. It just means Plan A didn't work out. Modern relationships have become fields of constant optimization. She's always assessing if someone better is available. Always comparing you with other options. Always calculating whether what she invests in the relationship is yielding adequate returns. And the return isn't measured in love, companionship, or loyalty. It's measured in perceived value. How much you add to her life compared to the cost of keeping you around. This explains why so many relationships end precisely when the man needs support the most. He loses his job, falls ill, enters a crisis. In those moments, his perceived value plummets. And certain women don't stay to rebuild together. They leave to find someone who's already at the top, someone who doesn't need reconstruction. Because for them, a relationship isn't unconditional partnership. It's a strategic association that lasts as long as both sides deliver equivalent value. Here we reach the point where everything intensifies. The most brutal truth about this value system is that it works because most men refuse to see it. They prefer to believe in the fantasy of unconditional love, in the illusion that being a good person is enough to be valued. But while they cultivate invisible kindness, other men cultivate visible value. And they win the game without even realizing they're playing. The most painful moment in a man's life is when he finally understands that everything he was taught about relationships was wrong. That being kind doesn't attract, it only makes you used. That being faithful isn't valued, it only makes you look like you have no options. That being always available doesn't build connection, it only destroys your perceived value. Every moral lesson he learned at home proves useless on the real battlefield of modern relationships. The second twist is even more bitter. Even when you understand the game, continuing to play erodes something inside you. Because maintaining perceived value constantly requires perpetual performance. It requires never fully relaxing. Never showing real weakness. Never fully trusting. You become an actor portraying the optimized version of yourself, knowing that if the mask falls, her interest falls with it. There is no rest. There is no genuine vulnerability. There is only strategic maintenance of value. Many men reach this point and feel a deep anger. Not anger at women specifically, but anger at the whole system. Anger for having wasted years trying to be good when they should have been strategic. Anger for having believed in empty promises that personality surpasses appearance, that character surpasses status, that love surpasses value. Anger for discovering too late that they were fighting with the wrong weapons in a war they didn't even know existed. This anger manifests in different ways. Some men become cynical, treating relationships as pure transactions, without real emotional investment. Others isolate completely, deciding that the game isn't worth the energy required to win. Some spiral into self-destruction, blaming themselves for not being enough. And a minority learns to navigate the system consciously, maintaining high value while protecting the heart from unrealistic expectations. What no one tells you is that this value system doesn't only benefit certain women. It also benefits high-value men, those who already know how to play. They circulate through relationships collecting experiences, while ordinary men fight for crumbs of attention. They never fully commit because they know commitment reduces perceived value. They keep options open because they know artificial scarcity generates desire. They understand the brutal math and profit from it. Meanwhile, the average man keeps losing. He invests emotionally too much, too fast. He shows interest too clearly. He becomes too predictable. And each of these mistakes reduces his perceived value until he becomes invisible. Until she starts looking around for something better. Until the relationship ends without a real explanation, leaving him confused, questioning what he did wrong when in reality his only mistake was not understanding the unwritten rules of the game. The most tragic part is realizing that this system has contaminated even genuine relationships. Those few women who truly value character above perceived value have become too rare to trust. Those few men who still try to build something real based on true connection are seen as fools by society. Cynicism has won. Strategy has won. And romantic love has become a museum piece, something that existed in the past but no longer works in the present. But there is an even deeper layer to this reality. Because if you stop to think, this value system didn't appear out of nowhere. It isn't an exclusive product of modernity or social media. It has always existed, it just became more explicit, faster, more impossible to ignore. The difference is that before, people pretended it wasn't like this. Today, you can't pretend anymore. Relationships have always been based on exchange, since the beginning of humanity. Men offered protection and resources. Women offered care and fertility. It was pragmatic, it was clear, it was honest in its transactional nature. But at some point, society romanticized it all. It created narratives of eternal love, soulmates, happily ever after. And these narratives worked for a while because there was social pressure to maintain relationships even when perceived value dropped. Today, that social pressure has disappeared. Divorce is normalized. Breakups are celebrated as liberation. Partner swapping is seen as personal growth. And without external pressure to maintain relationships, the only thing that remains is perceived value. When it drops, it's over. Simple as that. No guilt. No drama. Just migration to the next available option. The climax of this whole story isn't discovering that the system exists. It's realizing that you have two choices: accept the rules and play consciously, or reject the game completely and accept the consequences of that rejection. There is no third option. There is no middle ground. Either you maintain high value constantly, or you end up alone. Either you perform strategically, or you lose. The naked, raw truth is this. So what should you do with this information? How do you live knowing that modern relationships operate under this brutal logic of perceived value? The answer isn't simple, but it is liberating once you truly absorb it. Stop seeking relationships based on fantasy and start building relationships based on reality. First, accept that value matters. Don't pretend it doesn't. Don't fool yourself into thinking that being a good person is enough. Kindness without perceived value is invisibility. So build real value. Develop your skills. Improve your appearance. Expand your social connections. Increase your financial stability. Cultivate visible ambition. Not for external validation, but because these things improve your life independently of relationships. And when they improve your life, they automatically increase your perceived value. Second, never reveal everything at once. Men who show all their cards at the start lose negotiating power. They reveal that they have no other options. They demonstrate need disguised as generosity. Maintain mystery. Maintain controlled scarcity. Don't be absent to the point of seeming uninterested, but never be so present that you seem desperate. The balance between these two extremes defines how much power you retain in the dynamic. Third, observe behaviors, not words. She may say she values character, but she chooses appearance. She may say she wants stability, but she gets excited by unpredictability. She may say loyalty matters, but she tests other options on social media. Words lie. Actions reveal real priorities. So pay attention to what she does when she thinks you're not watching. Pay attention to who she chooses when she has multiple options. Pay attention to what makes her lose interest. These observations count more than 1,000 romantic declarations. Fourth, never stagnate. Perceived value is not earned once and stored forever. It is maintained through constant evolution. The man who stops growing is the man who starts losing. Always seek new challenges. Always pursue new goals. Always demonstrate upward movement. Because the moment you settle, the moment you completely relax, you become predictable. And predictable is the opposite of valuable. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, choose women who demonstrate the ability for balanced exchange. Not all women operate exclusively under this transactional logic. Some genuinely value partnership, commitment, and joint building. But they are a minority, and you need to be able to identify them. How? By observing how they behave when you face difficulties. Observing whether they invest in the relationship or merely consume. Observing whether they stay when your perceived value temporarily drops or start looking for a replacement. The most powerful moral lesson here isn't about manipulating women or playing psychological games. It's about protecting your own heart and investing your energy only where real reciprocity exists. Modern relationships function like a market because people treat them as a market. So be strategic. Be conscious. But above all, be selective. Do not accept crumbs of affection from someone who doesn't fully value you. Do not settle for someone who is with you only because better options aren't available. Do not build a life with someone who sees you as plan B. These situations drain energy, destroy self-esteem, and waste precious time that you could be using to build real value or find someone who truly recognizes it. The sad reality is that many men will continue losing because they refuse to wake up. They will continue believing in fairy tales while others play chess. They will continue investing in those who don't deserve it while ignoring those who would truly invest in them. They will continue being discarded and wondering why, without ever understanding the unwritten rules that govern modern attraction. But you don't have to be one of them. You now know the truth. You understand the system. And knowledge is power only when transformed into action. So act. Build your value intentionally. Demonstrate this value strategically. Protect your energy carefully. And above all, never delude yourself into thinking unconditional love exists in relationships where perceived value drives the dynamic. The final conclusion is this: relationships are not based on kindness, they are based on perceived utility. Accept this without bitterness. Use it without cynicism. And build your life in a way that your value is so solid, so visible, so undeniable, that only people truly compatible approach. Because in the end, the goal isn't to win the game. It's to play only with those worth playing with. If this reflection made sense to you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment which city or country you're watching from. I want to know how this reality manifests in your region. And most importantly, I want to know if you will wake up or continue sleeping.